I remember the night I first heard about kid flicks like it was yesterday. The news flashed across my screen while I was working late in my small apartment, a cup of cold coffee sitting next to my keyboard. Authorities had just taken down a massive dark web network that hosted thousands of child abuse videos. The report said the site had over 1 million visitors and that dozens of people had been arrested. The name kid flicks burned into my brain like a sickness. I had seen many dark things online, but this was different. Something about the scale of it all made my skin crawl. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and went to bed, hoping I could forget what I had seen. But I could not. Over the next few days, I found myself reading everything I could about the case, not because I was curious, but because something inside me felt pulled toward it. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was fear, or maybe it was something I cannot even explain. I just needed to know how something so evil had stayed hidden for so long. A week later, I received an email that looked like spam at first. The subject line simply read, "You looked into kid flicks. Want to help?" Normally I would have deleted it, but the timing was too strange. I clicked. The message said they had been watching my activity, noted my interest in the kid flicks takedown, and wanted to invite me to a closed forum where like-minded people were trying to uncover hidden layers of the dark web that even the police had not touched. They called themselves the janitors. I should have run. I should have ignored it, but I told myself I was doing something good, that I would just look, just observe. So I followed the instructions, downloaded their custom browser add-on, and entered the forum. It was nothing fancy. Just a black background, a white chat box, and a list of user handles with strange names like Dead Cleaner, Floor Sweep 92 Reels, and Sponge Face. I chose the name Ghost Helper and introduced myself. They welcomed me quickly and gave me a simple task. All I had to do was watch a list of flagged URLs and report if any of them became active. Simple. No content, no downloads, just monitoring. At first, it felt harmless. The links were all inactive, just strings of code and addresses that led nowhere. But after a few days, one of the links went green. I reported it. A few minutes later, Spongeface sent me a message that simply said, "Thank you. Another door opens." The next night, 2 more links came online. Then 5, then 10. It was like they were waking up. One night, I clicked on one of the links by accident. It opened a stream with no video, just sound. Static at first, then faint breathing. Slow, steady, like someone asleep. I quickly closed it and logged off. My heart was racing, but I told myself it was probably just a glitch. The next morning, a message appeared in my inbox. No sender, no subject, just a sentence. "Do not turn away when they breathe. That is when they notice." I stopped sleeping. I started seeing shadows in corners where nothing should be. I thought I was imagining things. But then, one night, I heard breathing, not from the speakers, from inside my apartment. I froze. It was slow, deep, and it came from my bedroom. I grabbed a flashlight and walked slowly toward the door. It was open just a crack. I pushed it, and the light hit the bed. No one, but the sheets were wrinkled, like someone had just gotten up. The smell in the room was strange, like sweat and something sour. I moved out the next day. I tried to leave the forum. I deleted the browser, wiped my drives, even changed apartments. But the breathing followed. Not every night, but enough to make me feel hunted. Then, one night, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. I stared at it for hours before finally plugging it in. There was only one file on it. A video. The thumbnail showed nothing but darkness. I clicked play. At first, it was black, with low static. Then shapes started to move. Figures, small and hunched, crawling on the ground. I could not tell if they were people or animals. Then I heard crying, the kind that comes from deep inside the throat, desperate. And then I heard myself, my own voice. A recording of me, whispering from one of my earlier online sessions. It was faint, but it was definitely me. I closed the file and tried to eject the drive, but the screen froze. Then the entire video changed. The figures in the dark began to turn. Their faces were blurred, but their eyes were white, glowing. They looked at me, through the screen, and then the video cut to black. A new message popped up. Now you know where we live. I reported everything to the police. I gave them the drive, told them about the forum, about the breathing, about the janitors. They said they would look into it, but I never heard back. A week later, I saw on the news that a fire had broken out at a data storage facility where the KidFlix evidence was kept. It destroyed most of the recovered data. The police said it was likely an accident, but I knew better. I knew it was them. Cleaning up. The janitors. I went offline after that, deleted everything, changed my name, my location. I even stopped using the internet for a while. But sometimes, late at night, my phone vibrates with no caller ID, and when I answer, there is just breathing. Slow, deep, watching. Now, I understand what that first message really meant. Want to help? They never wanted to stop KidFlix. They wanted to wake it up again. They were not cleaning the dark web. They were feeding it, keeping it hidden, growing it in places no one would think to look. Behind fake forums, inside charity groups, through the voices of people like me. Curious, hopeful, stupid. I was never helping. I was never in control. I was just holding the door open, and now I can never close it. They say curiosity is the first step toward your own destruction. I did not believe that until I found Sad Satan. It started on an ordinary night when I was bored out of my mind, scrolling through forums on the dark web. I was just looking for something strange to read, some creepypasta or weird conspiracy. I never expected to find a link with no name, just a line of text that said, "This game is not for you." Of course, that made me want to click it even more. It led to a thread filled with comments, all deleted, except for one that simply read, "Sad Satan lives in code. Open the door and see." There was a link. I clicked it without thinking too much, just chasing that thrill of something forbidden. The file was small, just a zipped folder with weird symbols as its name. When I opened it, there was only one thing inside an executable called Sad Satan X. No instructions, no readme, nothing else. My antivirus screamed at me, but I disabled it. I was too curious. When I launched the game, my screen flickered to black for a few seconds. Then the title appeared in grainy, static-filled white text, Sad Satan. There was no menu, no settings, no way to quit, except Alt plus F4. The game began with me standing in a dark hallway. The textures were glitchy and the walls looked like stretched photographs, but I could not make out what they were. Every step I took echoed like I was walking through a vast empty building, but I felt like someone or something was following close behind. At first, I thought it was just a weird indie horror game, made to be disturbing. I kept going down hallways that made no sense. They would bend in strange ways, loop back on themselves, or lead to a wall of static. The sound design was awful, not in quality, but in the way it made you feel. I could hear whispering that was just on the edge of understanding, mixed with random screams, crying, and distorted music that sounded like a broken lullaby. My hands were shaking on the keyboard, but I could not stop. I was locked into it, like the game had dug its claws into my mind. About 15 minutes in, things started to change. The textures on the walls began showing clearer images. Faces, real faces. Some looked afraid, others were wide-eyed and empty. One looked exactly like my own. I thought it was a coincidence, a trick, but then the game glitched hard and crashed. I stared at my desktop, feeling a strange pressure behind my eyes, like a headache that had not yet arrived. I went to delete the game, but the folder was gone, just disappeared. I checked the downloads folder, the recycle bin, even searched my whole drive. Nothing. It was like it had never existed. I assumed maybe it had installed itself somewhere hidden, so I gave up and went to bed, trying to shake off the unease. That night, I dreamed of the hallway, the same one from the game, but now I was not playing. I was walking through it, barefoot, the cold floor stinging my feet. I could hear the whispers more clearly. They said my name over and over. They told me to keep going. When I reached the end of the hallway, I saw a door. Behind it, I heard the sound of something breathing, loud, wet, waiting. I woke up before I opened it, drenched in sweat and breathing like I had run a marathon. But that was just the start. The next day, things in my apartment felt off. My lights flickered for no reason. My television turned on by itself and showed nothing but static. Every mirror in my place had this faint smudge on it, like a handprint pressed from the inside. I tried to laugh it off, blaming stress or lack of sleep, but deep down, I knew it was something else. The game had done something to me. It had not just installed files, it had installed itself into my head. I started seeing symbols from the game drawn into the frost on my window, scratched faintly into the paint on my walls. My phone's wallpaper changed to that same hallway. I never did it. I do not even know how it could have happened. 3 days later, the dreams turned into something worse. I would black out randomly and wake up in different parts of my apartment, sometimes holding things I did not remember picking up. Once, I woke up with dirt on my hands and scratches on my arms like I had crawled through something sharp. I stopped leaving the house. I was afraid of what I might do or what might follow me. I tried to tell someone. I called my best friend and tried to explain, but the moment I mentioned Sad Satan, the call dropped. When I redialed, his number was disconnected. When I checked his social media, his account was gone, completely wiped like he had never existed. That was when I knew I was alone. The last time I opened my laptop, it turned itself on in the middle of the night. I had not touched it, but there it was, on the desk, glowing in the dark. The game was running. I do not know how. I did not reinstall it. The hallway was there again, waiting. I sat down like I was being pulled in. I pressed forward, slowly, step by step. This time, the hallway did not loop. It kept going, getting narrower and darker until I reached that same door from my dream. I tried to stop, but my hands were not mine anymore. They moved on their own and opened the door. Behind it was a mirror, only it did not reflect me. It showed me staring at my screen from behind my own eyes. And behind me, standing in the shadows, was something tall, pale, featureless, watching. I tried to shut the laptop, but the lid would not close. I tried pulling the plug, but it would not budge. The lights burst, one by one, until I was surrounded by darkness. All I could hear was the breathing. Then a whisper right next to my ear said the same words from the post. "This game is not for you." When I woke up, the apartment was normal again. The computer was off. Everything looked fine, but I knew it was not. Because now, every time I close my eyes, I see the hallway, I hear the whispers, and no matter how far I run, the game still plays in the background of my mind. It was never just a game. It was a doorway, and I opened it. Now something has stepped through, and it is never going back. Neither am I. People always think the real danger lies in what you eat. No one ever warns you about what eats you from the inside. I was never proud of how I looked. I had struggled with my weight for years, trying every new trend that promised fast results. Keto, intermittent fasting, raw food diet, I tried them all. But nothing stuck, and after a breakup that shattered my confidence, I became desperate. One night, while scrolling through forums, I found a comment on a hidden page that mentioned a dark web vendor selling a miracle pill for extreme weight loss. I ignored it at first, thinking it was just another scam, but the words guaranteed results within days kept echoing in my mind. It was late, I was tired, and I hated the way my reflection stared back at me. Curiosity pushed me further than common sense ever could. The process to access the vendor's page was strange. It felt more like a test than a transaction. I had to answer a list of deeply personal questions about my health, my fears, and even my childhood. The final screen showed a single product listing: wormwood, natural weight extraction. The description said it was organic, ancient, and painless. Only one pill needed. One dose, permanent results. The warning label read "Not FDA approved. Use at your own risk." My heart pounded as I entered my anonymous crypto wallet details. The package arrived 3 days later in a plain black envelope with no branding or instructions, just a single white capsule inside a tiny glass vial. I hesitated for hours. I held the pill in my hand, turning it under the light, wondering if this would change my life or ruin it. But desperation is louder than fear. I took it with a glass of water before bed. That night, I had the most vivid dreams of movement beneath my skin, like small ripples flowing under my flesh. When I woke up, the scale showed I had lost 2 pounds overnight. I laughed, convinced it was water weight. But the next day, I lost 4 more, then 6. In a week, I dropped nearly 20 pounds. I was thrilled, but something was off. I started feeling tired all the time, like my body was hollowing out from the inside. My appetite vanished completely. Even when I forced myself to eat, it felt like the food disappeared before it reached my stomach. I could feel something inside me churning after every bite. The real fear began when I noticed movement on the surface, but deep within my core. It was like something was rearranging my insides, crawling, shifting. I ignored it at first, convincing myself it was gas or maybe hunger cramps. But then I started waking up with bite marks, perfectly round holes along my abdomen and thighs, almost too symmetrical to be natural. I checked for bed bugs, fleas, anything, but found nothing. My skin began to sag in places, not from weight loss but from something writhing underneath. I pressed my stomach one morning and felt something pull away beneath my hand. That was the moment I knew I was not alone in my body. I tried going to a doctor, but the receptionist turned me away because I had no insurance. I walked into an emergency room, but the wait time was 6 hours, and I was too weak to sit upright. I began researching parasites, self-treatment, anything I could do without a prescription. One site mentioned rare cases of tapeworm colonies growing uncontrolled when exposed to certain ancient herbs. I typed wormwood into a private search engine, and the results horrified me. The vendor was part of a long-standing dark web cult, obsessed with natural purging and body cleansing through internal infestation. They used genetically enhanced parasites bred to multiply rapidly, feeding on fat first, then muscle, then organs. The pill was not medicine, it was an egg. I tried to force myself to throw up. I drank bleach. I swallowed tablespoons of salt. I drank castor oil and even tried inserting garlic up my rectum because some forum claimed it killed parasites. Nothing worked. I started coughing up mucus, then black bile, then what looked like thin white strands that wiggled before sinking into the sink drain. My entire digestive system felt like it was vibrating. My fingers trembled constantly, and my nails began falling off. I had not eaten in 3 days, but I could feel things inside me growing heavier, moving faster. One night, I woke up in a cold sweat and found a long, white creature coiled in my bedsheet. It was alive. It had come out of me, and it was only one of many. I sealed myself in the bathroom, terrified and sobbing. I knew what I had to do. I found a list of anti-parasitic medications and black market sources for emergency treatment, but the prices were impossible. I sold everything I owned, my laptop, my phone, even my bed. I used the money to buy high-dose antihelminthics. The side effects were brutal. I hallucinated. I bled from my nose and ears. My skin turned pale and thin like wax paper, but it worked. Over several agonizing days, I passed more than 30 worms, some still alive, some writhing in the toilet bowl. I burned every towel and sheet in my apartment. Even now, I am not sure I got them all. I still feel something twitch under my ribs when I lie down. My weight has stabilized, but I wear long sleeves all the time because of the scars. I never told anyone, not my family, not my old friends, not even the doctor I finally saw who gave me iron supplements, and a look of confusion when I begged him to scan my insides. The dark web vendor disappeared. The link now shows a blank page. No trace, no record, nothing. And sometimes when I walk past mirrors, I feel like something behind my eyes is watching me, waiting for me to let my guard down. Because the hunger never truly goes away. It just hides, like they did. They say the worst monsters are the ones you cannot see. I never really believed that, until the day I got too close to something I should have left alone. I work in digital forensics, the kind of job that feels like a puzzle until the pieces stop fitting, and you start to realize the picture is something far darker than you expected. Last year, I took on a freelance investigation for an old logistics company called Abbott Freight. It had been around since the 1800s, run by the same family for generations. But overnight, everything shut down, files encrypted, drivers locked out of systems, warehouses frozen. The company was bled dry by ransomware, and no one could figure out where the attack came from. The owner, Paul Abbott, reached out to me when the FBI dropped the case. He said he had seen things he could not explain. I thought he was exaggerating. I thought he was just scared, but I was wrong. I met Paul at his home office in a quiet part of Massachusetts. He looked older than he should have been, like the stress had been eating him from the inside. His hands trembled when he handed me an external hard drive. It had logs, emails, and screenshots from their server before everything went dark. He told me he believed the attack was not just about money, that there was something evil in the code. I nodded politely and took the drive, thinking it would be another case of outdated software and weak firewalls. But as soon as I plugged it into my isolated system, I felt it. Not a glitch or a virus. Something else. The moment the folder opened, the lights in my office flickered. I brushed it off. I always do that, rationalize. But then I opened a file labeled Final, Request, and things began to spiral. It was an audio file. No voice. Just static. But in that static, there were patterns. Pulses. Like someone trying to speak through a storm. I ran it through a spectrogram and froze. The waveform formed numbers. IP addresses. One of them led to a hidden server on the dark web. I should have stopped there, but curiosity and pride pushed me forward. I accessed the server using a burner machine and a layered VPN. The screen was black, except for a blinking prompt. Enter. I typed it in and waited. The screen flickered and loaded what looked like a live feed of a warehouse. Empty, but I recognized the Abbott Company logo on the crates. This was one of their distribution centers. I clicked on a time-stamped clip and watched grainy footage of a man walking between aisles. He kept looking over his shoulder like he was being followed. Then the lights went out. When they flickered back on, he was gone. The camera kept recording, but the warehouse remained still until the crates began moving on their own. I logged off immediately, heart racing, and called Paul. He answered after the third ring, his voice low and shaky. I told him what I saw and asked if the warehouse was still active. He said no. The power had been cut months ago. No access, no staff. It was sealed by the authorities. I asked who the man in the footage was. Paul went quiet. Then he whispered, "I think that was me. I do not remember being there, but I have been having dreams. I see crates. I hear whispers. Sometimes I wake up and there is dirt under my nails." I did not know what to say. I told him I would investigate further and hung up, trying to make sense of it. But I could not shake the feeling that I had opened something that wanted to stay closed. That night, I heard noises in my apartment. Scratching, a low hum like distant machinery. I live alone. My equipment was shut down. I checked every room, every socket. Nothing. I tried to sleep, but kept seeing the feed in my mind. The man, the crates, the darkness. At 3 a.m, I got an email from an address that was not traceable. No subject, no body, just an attachment named Abbott, H-E-I-R-R. I opened it and found a document explaining the company's lineage. Generations of Abbotts. Every 20 years, a male heir would disappear for a week. They would come back changed, quiet, distant, but the company always prospered after that. Until now. I went back to Paul's house the next day, demanding answers. He looked worse than before, pale, eyes sunken. He told me the truth, or at least what he believed. The company had been founded on something dark, a ritual, a deal. Every 20 years they had to give something up, a life, a piece of themselves. His grandfather called it feeding the line. In return, the business thrived. Deliveries never late. Storms never touched their roots. But Paul refused to continue the ritual. He wanted to end the cycle. That is when the ransomware hit. But it was not just code. It was a curse, a punishment. He showed me his arms, covered in cuts and strange symbols. He said he woke up with them, no memory of doing it. He said he hears voices from the drives, that they call themselves the manifest, and they were not human. They lived in the data, in the wires, in the frequencies, and they were angry. I left his house that night, shaken. I thought about deleting everything, burning the drives, moving away, but part of me needed to see it through. I went back to the hidden server. This time the feed was not the warehouse. It was my apartment. Live. The camera panned slowly from my front door to my bedroom. Then the screen went black. I ran home, heart pounding. Everything looked fine, nothing out of place. But when I opened my laptop, the static from the audio file was playing again, louder. This time, beneath the noise, I heard a voice, a whisper. You saw too much. Now you are part of the freight. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, lights flicker whenever I touch a device. My screens show symbols I do not recognize. I hear footsteps in the hallway when I am alone. Paul is gone, vanished without a trace. His house is empty, his name removed from the records. It is like he never existed. And sometimes, late at night, I get emails from him. Just one line. The cargo is moving. If you are reading this, do not try to find them. Do not follow the signals. There are things buried in the dark web that are not meant to be unearthed. Not every frequency is safe. Not every system can be controlled. And if you ever hear static that starts to sound like a voice, turn it off, or it will find you, just like it found me. If these stories gave you chills, there's more waiting in the shadows. Subscribe to Horror Spectrum and never feel alone again.